Woo! Hello, welcome to BeekTalk. I know I'm early for today's episode, but here in the Pocono Mountains, the weather is beautiful. It is about 60 degrees uh, throughout the Poconos, and I want to talk about a few things that some beekeepers are going to be going through. If they haven't already experienced this, they'll be experiencing it soon, or maybe they're lucky and don't have to worry about it. But I am going to be talking about cleaning out deadouts. This is not really a fun thing to do. Some people who really like biology and like the investigation, like cleaning out deadouts. But for other people, it's really heartbreaking. Beekeepers, we like to keep bees to, to keep bees healthy and happy and to find success with it. And unfortunately, the first few years that beekeepers keep bees, almost religiously, their colonies don't survive the winter. And that doesn't really have anything to reflect on the beekeeper because you're just new and you're learning how to do things. And bees are very intricate creatures. They have very particular cultures in the way they do things. If you see, I already have bees on my veil here. I am out in my nuke yard here in the Poconos, and I've already went through this apiary once this year to check and see how things are doing. And today, since it's so warm, I'm going to go through and give these nukes a grade. So next time I'm here, I know which ones to pay extra attention to and which ones are probably going to be fine. I'm also going to discover who did not make it. So disclaimer, in this video, there are going to be some hives that are not alive. And the point of this conversation is that it's okay. It happens to all beekeepers. The goal of beekeepers is to just reduce the percentage of hives that die over winter. Backyard new beekeepers who are only having a hive or two, it would not be unusual to experience a 50% loss. So if you go in with two hives, only one of them or maybe none of them survive. For commercial beekeepers and people who raise bees and sell them, or are big honey producers, or who are involved in honey pollination, or crop pollination, I should say, they're hoping to get to 20, 15, 20, 25% loss. And that's pretty standard. For as long as bees have been around, hives die over winter. That's simply the way it goes. But I think it would be good, since the goal of this show is to give confidence to new beekeepers, and I think it would be good for everyone to experience a little bit of outdoors instead of my usual set inside the office, and also to just see that beekeeping is maybe not all the honey that people expect it to be. So I am streaming from my phone, which I'm not used to. So I'm not sure if I can see comments, but if you're watching, certainly give me a comment. Let me know where you're watching from, if you have hives or bees, and if you've lost any so far this season. Like I said, it's not unusual to lose bees. It's part of the way that it goes. Um, Also, forgive me, it's very sunny, so I'm not sure if things are going to get cut out and get some sun glare in there. But I'm going to flip my camera around if I can. And I will put you on a tripod and we can start looking into hives. Here we go. So I'm going to just put this down really quick. I hope that you all can see this at home. Like I said, I'm working in the field here. So it's a little bit of a different experience for me producing this show. But I would love to hear from you. I see that Russell is watching in from Las Vegas, and no losses, but it was a mild winter. See, for us in the Poconos, I checked some hives in the beginning of February. Oh, I'm sorry, the beginning of January. It was warm enough, and the bees were doing all right then, but I'm not entirely sure that they are making it. We had a really cold spell, just like the folks in the middle of the country and in Texas experienced. February was very, very cold. And a nice warm January followed by a very cold February. Woo! We got some alive girls. I don't know if you can see. There's a nice big cluster of bees here. I don't usually implore people to turn their boxes upside down, but if you can see, there is some bees clustered on the top of this entrance here. Woo! So I'm going to flip this back over so I don't torment them too much. By the way, I want to talk about some tools that I have. I'm using a hive tool. I'm also using a Sharpie and some duct tape to grade these colonies. And like I said, since I'm figuring out the framing for this, I might need to move you a little closer to see inside. Yeah, here we go. So you see all the girls are flying out in the front. These nucs alternate the entrances. So some are facing towards me. Some are facing towards the environment out in front. Here's what I do is I just pull out a frame, see if I can see the queen, which I do see. This is a Caucasian queen here. On the tip, she is blue. I'm trying to see if... Let me adjust my framing. It's also difficult doing this with a veil on, but we are all experimenting. Where'd she go? Here she is, down here. Whoop. Awesome. So this hive is certainly alive, and they have a queen, which is good. And I'm not entirely confident the queen is laying eggs yet, which is all right. These nucs, it's still very early. These nucs are not set to leave my my care until another 4, maybe 5 weeks. A lot of people in the industry are having their nucs come out a little bit later than usual because, oh, sorry girls, because of their very particularly cold February. But this hive certainly looks like it's doing well. So I'm going to close it back up, not before I give it a little bit of pollen. Feeding pollen this time of year is risky business for beekeepers who are not that experienced. If you came in the first week of February and you gave them some pollen, and then we had such an excruciatingly cold February, it's very possible that pollen would be more detrimental than beneficial to the bees. But I'm going to just close this girl right back up. I push the frames together. Just to let you know, below this, I have sugar. So if the girls need food, they can come right in here. I'm going to close up the lid. And then now it's time for me to grade this nuc. So I'm hoping everyone can hear me out there and see what I'm doing. This hive has 3 out of 5 frames. And I saw the queen. And today is the 9th of March. And now let's move along. I have a feeling that this next hive is not doing too well. So we'll move right along. I want to make sure everything's in frame here. All right. You excited? Let's give it a look. Like I said, if you are watching this show, I'd love to hear where you're watching from. The sugar up here is all wet, which is a little bit of a concern. That means there's moisture getting in the hive somewhere. But, excuse me, the sugar is sucking it up, which is really good. Dry sugar in a hive acts as a desiccant, so it acts like it's drying out the hive. No girls are on the inside, and you see some moisture buildup in there. And this hive really only has 3 of the frames. Let me see if I can get you a little bit closer. Yeah, so again, I'm going to pull out one of the middle hives. I'm sorry, one of the middle frames. And Unfortunately, squishing bees is kind of part of it. Since today's topic is a touch morbid, um, and we're talking about dead bees, I will talk about how squishing bees is kind of just part of it. Unfortunately, I know beekeepers who take their time and don't crush any bees. That's good for them. But when I have so many hives to check, I can't do it all. Up here, I have the queen running around. She's very active. Looks like this is a Saskatraz. She's not marked, so I got to see if you can find her at home. If you're finding the queen in these, I would love to see. Send me a message. I'm sorry. Send a comment if you're finding the queen. This one is laying. So believe it or not, even though this hive, this colony here, has not as many bees as the previous one, I would say it's a touch bit healthier because they're already starting to lay some eggs. So that means they put aside some food last year and they are already using it for this year. So again, I'm just going to put down a little bit of pollen to get them going. You don't, if you're feeding pollen in the spring or the late winter, you want to make sure that they have enough pollen, because the worst thing that you could do is feed them, have them get used to being fed, and then have the food run out, because then they can't get it from the environment, which is a big time bummer for the bees. So I'm going to write this one down as 3 out of 5 frames again. I saw the queen and she's laying. And then today is the 9th again. So if you can see, I put little pieces of duct tape on my hives just to keep a record, and I keep it on the lid. So then if I need to paint the lid again or scrape it off, I have that ability. Let's see. Whoa, we got some other folks from Pennsylvania. Welcome. I love having some locals on here. And Tim, good to have you on the show as always. This is the rewarding part. Uh-oh. I'm not getting a good feeling about this one. If you're just tuning in, I have the topic of the show today. Yeah, here we go. So this is what I call a bummer hive because the colony did not make it. The bees are clustered in there and down here. And if you look really closely, see that blue dot? I'm sure you can guess who that is. The issue with this colony, I know that beekeepers always are trying to diagnose when their hives don't make it. It looks like this hive is just one for natural causes. It looks like they're too small to begin with. So instead of going into winter with 5 frames, it's possible they went into winter with only a few. Whew. I'm trying to adjust my tripod here. It's a single man production. So I do something a little odd. I have some holistic beekeeper friends who are interested in queen pheromone. Ooh. So I actually remove the queen and put her in a little jar to give to my holistic beekeeper friends and see if they can come up with a cologne or some kind of potion. So that is one eclectic thing that I do. But otherwise, I have this handful of bees. To be honest, this colony probably died within the last really cold spurt or so. I don't see any mites on the bees, and I've treated this apiary really well. And this queen actually looked like she was from a line that is naturally more mite resistant. So I don't think mites is an issue. I just think that they might have been too small of a cluster to make it through, which is a bummer. You see there's some in here. They look a little damp and oily. There is still honey in this hive. So they're not laying any eggs or anything. So that is a bummer. This hive didn't make it. But out of the 4 that I've checked so far, this is the only one that didn't make it. So far I'm running a 25% loss, which is not that bad. As a beekeeper, my goal is to have a loss somewhere around 15 to 50%. I'll accept, but I really, really don't like a 50% loss. But that is just the way that it goes, my friends. Unfortunately, you come across some dead hives. So now what I'm going to do is scrape off my notes from last year, and I'm just going to put a big X over this for today. I am relocating this apiary in a couple days, in a couple weeks. So I am going to have to come through and remove all of these. So leaving myself some nice notes definitely makes it easier. All right, so now we're checking number 5, and I'm not feeling confident about this one either, but that is all right. Nobody's touching the sugar up top, which is not really a good sign. Woo! Yeah, it doesn't look like this one made it. So now let's dig a little deeper and see if we can find out why. It's possible that a mouse could have moved in and disrupted the hive. Many things are possible. Hive looks a little damp. There's some mildew growing on and a little bit of moisture falling out. I don't know if you can see, but there's actual moisture falling right out of the frame here. So it's very possible that these bees were taking in syrup that wasn't thick enough and they didn't have enough time to dehydrate it or condense it down, I should say. And unfortunately, bizarrely, there's not too many bees at the bottom of the hive. There is still some honey. I just think this is another example of a hive that might not have been strong enough going into winter. Yeah, I'm not even sure if I'll be able to find the queen. I do like to take a few minutes when the hive is still put together from when it collapsed over the winter to take a moment and see if I can find the queen. That way I can tell, because if they're all clustered up around the queen like they were in that last colony, then I know that it wasn't a queen failure or anything like that. This one, I think I would just chalk up to either being just one of them that collapses or some queen failure. Since I couldn't find it, they weren't really clustered anywhere. It's just possible that they hung on until January with the idea of a queen, but not actually having one around. So since this hive collapsed, I'm not going to put any pollen in it because that's just going to introduce some small hive beetles or some other pests to come in and harass them. Even though it's dead, I do still have a dozen or so other colonies here. So I do want to make sure that I'm keeping the apiary happy and healthy. Let me check in here and see how we're doing. I use disposable gloves when I do my operations here. So I think it's time to swap out and put a new pair on. If you are just tuning into the show now, I want to let you all know that I'm Eric from Blossom and Buzz Beekeeping. And I'm a beekeeping educator, and I sell honeybees. These are actually some nucs that I have already pre-ordered for some folks that'll go out in another month or 4 or 5 weeks. And since it's a nice warm day, I figure I'd come out to the apiary and check on them, see how they're doing, make sure I didn't oversell or anything like that. This is the first time I'm checking these hives since the bulk of the winter. And unfortunately, this, finding dead hives is part of it. It's not fun, but it is certainly part of beekeeping. People think that, they're just insects. If I get bees, it'll be like having an anthill. But it's a lot more like agriculture than you'd like to think. Whoop. So here's another hive that didn't make it. And if you can see, there's a little tiny cluster right here. So if I'm going to bet anything, I'm going to bet the queen is on one of these two frames on the side that's in the middle. And you can see all 5 frames are pretty much empty, except for that tiny little cluster there, which basically means that one of those days in February, it simply got too cold. And the bees, there weren't enough bees in this hive to make it work, which is, of course, it's a bummer. But, oh, wait a second. Let's pull this out and take a look. Yep, there's a few clustered over here. They are, I'm not sure if you can see with the sun, but the bees are face down inside of the combs here, which usually means they were hungry. And I would believe it because that frame is dry of food. This frame is also pretty dry of food. You see how they're clustered up here? That's a symbol that the hive was doing well. It probably just starved or was a little too small to keep up with the heat demand for the really cold days we had in February, which is unfortunate. But like I said, again, here's the queen. So they were happy and healthy until it got a little too cold for them. That looks like a Caucasian queen. And while I'm here, I try and get out some of the dead bees just so I don't have to deal with it later. I kind of try and clean up my deadouts as much as I can while I'm already sad about having deadouts. So that way, in a week or two, when the spring comes around and it's really, really warm, I don't have to dwell on the fact that I lost hives over the winter. If you are tuning in, I'd love to hear where you are from and see if you lost any hives, or if you're not a beekeeper yet and you're interested in becoming a beekeeper, what your plans are to get going. If you're going to be purchasing some bees this year, or you're just doing some research. Ooh. So I put this feeder back on just because I don't really have a place to put the sugar. But when I come back, I'll actually take all this sugar, even though it's hardened on the inside the feeder. I'll come back with a bucket and I'll recover all of this sugar and actually basically make syrup out of it to feed them in the spring. So your investment in sugar in the winter can also translate to a little bit of a recovery on that investment in the spring. So this one's going to be dead on today's date. So out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that I've checked, I've now lost 3. So you can see how in a few minutes my 25% loss has converted to a 50% loss. And I'm not too discouraged because last year I had something like a 5% loss, which is an absolute anomaly as far as beekeeping goes. So this year, if I had a 50% loss, that wouldn't be too unheard of. And here we go again. This is another hive that did not make it. I told you this was going to be morbid, right, guys? Again, I have a small cluster that I'm going to look through. And we'll see how those girls are doing. I was originally planning to do my BeekTalk today about building these nuke boxes. But since the weather is so nice, I figured I might as well show you me cleaning these deadouts so you don't feel so alone when you're cleaning out your own. Like I said, it is pretty standard to have hives that don't make it through the winter. And I see in like the groups, in the Facebook groups and such, people get really upset. And I remember those days. You got to keep in mind, I've been beekeeping now for, I think this is going to be my 15th year. So I have certainly lost my fair share of hives. I think I had all my hives die the first 5 years I was a beekeeper. And it's just one of those things you learn, and the bees will show you success when you're ready for it. But for now, oh, it is a bummer going through these hives and having them not be thriving. But bees are really easy to multiply in the springtime. So even if you do experience a 50% loss, it's very possible that you can split them and get them going at the original number by the time dandelions are done blooming. So I'd really like to have one more living hive on this stand before I move over, and I think this might be it. Up there, I have some bees that are living below the sugar. Woo! See, there's a big cluster of bees right here. Just looking really quickly to see if I can see the queen, which I do not. It always pays to review your lids before you put them down, because one squishing of a queen can really mess up your deal. If one of these hives, if I killed a queen while doing one of these inspections today, the hive will certainly perish. It is still too much winter, too cold for them to not have a queen, and they get kind of aimless without a queen. Just like beekeepers kind of get aimless when they don't have bees. Woo! This is a healthy hive. Pulling out one for sorry girls. Pulling out one frame. We'll take a look. Healthy. A bit of a funny smell in here. So when I come back in a couple days or couple weeks, I'm gonna have to put in some Pro DFM. There's the queen on this frame. I don't know if you can see her. She's up in the corner here, now towards the middle of the frame. But also what happened down here, there are some cells that have brood in them, but it does not look like the brood made it. So that means in the wintertime, they started laying too early and it got too cold. So the bees were not able to keep the colony at brood rearing temperatures. No matter what the outside temperature is, where the queen bee is living in the colony is going to be 90 degrees. But that's only the queen. They got to keep her fertile. The rest of the hive can lower in temperature. Ooh, so we'll put this back. So the gist of that is if they start laying eggs too early, they can't keep the hive warm enough for the eggs. And they will certainly jettison a few eggs before they let their queen get cold. So sometimes the first batch of brood is I don't want to say throwaway, but first batch of brood for the year might not see the spring. We'll put it that way. I'm going to say this is a 4 out of 5 hive, and DFM because it smells funny, and then I'm also going to do queen, and then today's date. So it's a Sharpie is definitely a good tool to keep in the apiary. This hive does not look like it's making it, my friends. Yep, again, this is just like the other colony that I showed you. Whew. Losing some pieces here. Oh, we have Felicia from Kunkletown, another PA peep, and she's on her 4th year. So Felicia, I do not know if you've had hives survive the winter, but in your 4th year, you should have had maybe one. I'm not sure how many colonies you keep, but there is our queen bee, my friends. Sorry, girls. I think that's the queen at least. After the bees are dead for a little while, they start to become misshapen. So it is a little harder to identify the queen after the colony collapsed. Whoop. Yeah, I'm going to say that's the queen. This hive, again, I think it was just too small of a cluster. to make it through the winter. If it only had, 2 frames of bees going in, the chances of it surviving a heavy winter like we just experienced are a little bit lower. But the 2019 to 2020 winter was actually pretty quiet and pretty warm. So a 2-frame nuke very possibly could have survived a winter like 2 years ago. But this February was certainly way too cold. All right, so on this stand, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, 9's not good math for that. Anyway, I have more hives behind me, so give me a second and I will reset. I have Joseph asking me a really good question. He's asking, come back around to this side. Joseph is asking me, what is DFM? Pro DFM is basically a probiotic for your bees. And what it does, give me 1 second as I'm resetting the hives here. Pro DFM, like I said, is a probiotic that is good for the bees for if they're having some nosema issues, which are very common this time of year. If you look on this white tarp I have here, these little brown dots are actually bee poop. And since I have so many colonies in this patch here, it wouldn't be uncommon to just have that much poop. But it is a fairly normal operation for me in my keeping of bees to apply some Pro DFM in the spring. So I believe there's DFM, which is, I guess, the not professional, and then they also have Pro DFM. I have not really had much experience with regular DFM. I don't even know what the acronym DFM stands for. But it's pretty good stuff. It's a powder that you put on your hives, you sprinkle on the frames, and it's basically like kombucha or a good like ginger ale for the bees. So, woo! Look at them. They're not happy to now have their inside be bright like outside. But let's take a look. Let me transition you back around to be on this side. Oh yeah, Fumidil B is also for nosema, and that's if you're really knee deep in nosema. Exactly, it is for nosema. If you're really experiencing a lot of nosema issues, the bees, you're well into spring, there's a honey flow, and the bees still aren't healthy. They're looking kind of greasy, and there's all kinds of that brown poop everywhere. Woo! Sorry. I would implore you to start using Fumidil B. However, I have not needed to use it in a very long time. Pro DFM usually does a good job for me. And I also have Wayne. Wayne purchased one of my nukes a few years ago, or last year. He's gonna need one more. Yeah, I'll contact you later, Wayne, when I'm not in the hives here. But look how beautiful this colony looks. All 5 frames have bees on them. Looks pretty good. That back half is a little weak, but like I said, these colonies here have another 4 to 5 weeks before they're gonna leave. So, let me get my tripod all fixed before I continue talking here. All right. Yeah, and again, so if you're watching this live stream, I'd like to hear where you're from. It looks like I got a lot of folks from Pennsylvania here, which is great. I'm located in the Poconos, which is northeastern Pennsylvania. But beekeeping here is very similar to beekeeping in New York and New Jersey and Maryland and things like that. So there's a lot you can learn from beekeepers in your general geographic area. A lot of people who make YouTube videos about bees are often very happy to disclose where they're located. That way, you can get a grasp of what your bees should be doing in an area near you. This hive looking good. Lots of bees in here. I am seeing maybe that's some brood. My eyes haven't fully adjusted to the bee season yet. So, not sure if it's just sugar or debris or some developing bees. But I see a queen. Let's see if you can see a queen. There she is. All right, we'll put her back in here. I don't want to disturb them too much. If you see there's 5 frames, I'm only ever really pulling out 1 or 2. And that is just to make sure everyone is happy and healthy and there's food and there's no craziness going on. So I have this hive, push all the frames back together, give them a little slice of pollen. This is a very happy, healthy hive here. So probably in another 2 weeks, I'll have to pull a frame out of it to make sure that it's not going to swarm by the time I have clients picking them up. I should mention these are overwintered nucs, which means the beekeeper bites the losses, which is part of our discussion here about, you're not going to have every hive survive every winter. Let me see if I can find my roll of tape and tape up these colonies. Put you in frame here. This one is a 4 out of 5, which is great for this time of year. I saw the queen and today's date. And I'm just going to pop some of these labels on the rest of the hives so I don't have to stop in between. I keep my feeders on for another month. And then once it is consistently warm, it's not getting below freezing too often at night, I'm going to transition from a dry feed to a syrup feed. And I'll start with a little bit of a heavier syrup, and then I'll transition to a light syrup. The first round of heavy syrup is just because I don't want to introduce an extraordinary amount of moisture when there's still the possibility of it getting super cold. Woo! I got that. I got this. Yeah, I figured I'd give you a little bit of the bee experience here. All right. We have Stefan from New Jersey. Howdy. We have Russell, who's asking if I put eutheromycin in my pollen. No, I don't add anything to my pollen. However, I do use, I think it's called Pollen Pro, and it's offered by Man Lake. And I believe it has other enzymes and like amino acids added to it to try its best to mimic natural pollen. But of course, you can't even pretend that this pollen substitute and natural pollen are in any way equivalent. This stuff is basically like a Tootsie Roll compared to the hefty salad that you would get eating actual pollen from the environment. Then I have Kim asking, oh, she's from Massachusetts, first year, but lost mine in August. Trying again this year. That is the goal. If you lose your bees, don't be discouraged. Please try again. Like I said earlier, I'm not sure if you were on, but I think I spent my first 5 seasons losing bees every year. And of course I was a kid. Woo, this one's alive. Of course I was a kid back then, and it was not my money that I was spending, but I certainly learned a lot in those years. And now that I'm a bit older, I figure that it's a good thing to do for the community to give you some of my perspective that I've learned over that time. Woo! Let's see what we got. Hive looking healthy. Bees looking good. There's still food here. Don't see the queen. Let me see if I can look in the cells. Oh, but I do see eggs. If you see eggs, you know there's a queen. I should say if you see healthy eggs. If you see a bunch of eggs in one cell, that is not natural for a healthy queen who has been laying for a while. Since these are overwintered nucs, I expect there to be healthy laying queens in here. Not always the case, but that's my expectation. Since I saw some eggs and they looked fine, I'm just going to close this right up. No need to try and pull out every frame looking for the queen. If I see eggs, I know she's in there. And I also know that they got to keep this hive really warm. So I don't want to mess them up by having the hive open to the 50-degree air. So this is going to be a 3 out of 5 laying, and the date. Always date your stuff. That way, if you have to call a more experienced beekeeper and have them try and help you figure out what's going on, you have some information. Because nothing is worse than when I get a call from a customer or a concerned beekeeper and I say, oh, well, when did you do this? When did you do your last inspection? When is the last time you saw eggs? And they say, oh, I don't know. Sorry, guys, I really can't help you. And that's not just me. That's any other beekeeper you'd talk to. So here's an example of a hive that didn't make it. Whew. I do see some clustering, which is, it's actually good to see clustering because that way you know that they just died and it wasn't like a genetic issue or anything like that. It was just them dying, and that's how it goes. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that, but these girls look a little greasy and wet. So it's very possible that it was just too moist in the hive for them. I see that. Oh, here is a perfect example to talk about the materials you use to build your hives. Most of my nucs are built out of 3/4-inch plywood that is kiln dried and then painted. This nuc that collapsed is made out of OSB. It's called Oriented Strand Board. And it's basically wood chips that are pressed and glued together. The issue is, OSB absorbs a ton of moisture. So if I was guessing that this hive already died of moisture, and then now that I see that it's in an OSB box, for sure this hive died from moisture. So one last thing I want to do, just to be curious, let me put this back down. Ooh, I'll put this back on. We know that it's dead, but all my sugar up here is so wet and goopy. I could probably wring water out of it if I needed to. So that is what I would say. I would say this hive definitely died from moisture. This sugar is completely saturated. So that is a bummer. But that is part of the reason why I transitioned away from using OSB and onto using more premium plywood, because I just lost a whole nuc most likely because of the material the hive was constructed out of. This is going to get a big X. Some folks invest in premium cedar or cypress because they don't have to paint cedar or cypress. It is naturally water resistant. Hope you guys can hear me when I'm walking away. But the plywood for the nucs, using traditional regular layered plywood, is a pretty good bet. Not the greatest, not good for many seasons, but it is good to have a few extra nuc boxes laying around just in case you have a swarm to catch or you have to make an emergency split. or your really experienced beekeeper friend says, hey, I got an extra split, you want to take it? Those are free bees, my friends. Now, I'm just checking in to see some comments here. Kim says, I got my son interested and he's getting his first bees in April. Awesome, Kim. I don't know how old your son is, but beekeeping is a perfect experience for anyone who loves some science and some biology. And even if you like politics or things like that, there's a lot to learn about the honeybee. So very good. Have your son follow the show so he can get some tips and tricks. And then I got Wayne here who's asking, is it too cold to do a mite treatment? Woo! Oh, Kim says he's 25. Awesome. Perfect age. I'm 23, almost 24. So lot to learn. It's certainly, if he likes it, it'll be a good experience that he'll probably do for many, many years. Wayne is asking, is it too early or too cold to do a mite treatment? It depends. It is probably a little too cold to be doing most of your treatments. It's certainly outside the temperature range for Apivar, Formic Pro, any kind of formic acid, any of that stuff. One treatment that would work in this temperature is a oxalic vapor treatment. And since brood levels are probably very low in the colony, now would be a good time to do OAV. Here again, I have another collapsed colony here, which is a bummer, but that is the way it goes, unfortunately, my friends. Woo! Let me see if I can find the queen in this cluster here. And unfortunately, I do not. Again, I told you this was going to be a morbid episode, but I don't want you to be out there losing colonies feeling like it's only happening to you. It is happening to all beekeepers throughout all sectors of the industry. That is just the climate of keeping bees. I have some older beekeeper friends who've been beekeeping for 40, 50 years, and they talk about the golden years before, you see the sun coming through the hole in the foundation here. They talk about the golden years before varroa mites came around. And they talk about how easy it was to keep bees. You'd put your supers on in the spring, come back in the fall, and harvest your honey. And that is not the case anymore. We have to have plans in place to treat for mites. So it's good that you're talking about it, Wayne. It's also good to have plans put in place to replace losses, which is what I'm doing here. I'm developing the skill and the tricks and stuff to learn how to keep producing my own bees so I don't have to keep buying bees. Haven't purchased bees from beekeepers in a long time, a few years, with the exception of special genetics. But we definitely have to get in the habit of learning how to replace our own losses. Let me check in this hive here. Get the feeling they might be doing all right. Small cluster. Some bees up top here. Don't see the queen, but that is okay. Very small cluster. I'm not even sure if you can see them back there. Little tiny, tiny, tiny cluster. And you might think, oh, this hive's almost dead. It might be, but I have had colonies that overwintered just this big and then were 50, 60 pound 2 or 3 honey super colonies when it came to harvesting. So certainly, just like if you're a person who keeps plants, just because it's dropping leaves doesn't mean you shouldn't still be looking after it and seeing if it'll bounce back. Woo! Beautiful look we have going on here. I'm going to give them a little. Oh, they are laying eggs as we speak. It's too messy of a technology setup I have right here to show you the insides of the frames and the eggs that are developing. However, hopefully, after I figure out how this live stream went, I can figure that out for the next couple of live streams. So this one is only going to get a 2 out of 5 because it has some growing to do. But don't get me wrong, it's already laying, and all it takes is 21 days for those eggs to hatch. So we might be well underway in getting this nuke out the door in 4 or 5 weeks. Cool. Let's move right along. I hope you guys are enjoying this out there. It's a beautiful day to be outside in the Poconos. And anytime up, so right here, I already see there's a lot of moisture in the hive. So we'll just take a look and hope they're doing all right, but I'm not getting my hopes up. Oh, and believe it or not, this colony is still alive. There's some bees right down in there. And we'll see. Yeah. Russell's saying the cluster on top was too small because they were covering brood. Yep. This is not the time of year you want to be shuffling frames around, making it really messy and hard for them. Because if you move one frame of not brood in between the cluster of brood, you can mess up your bees. And that's not what we're trying to do. It looks like there's really only one frame that's active on here. And I see a queen. And I see eggs. And they are happy. My little blue dot for the 2020 queen. I'm just going to put this right back in here. I'll move this frame and just see a little bit of honey on it, a little bit more honey, so I'll flip it around. I know I just said I don't want you flipping frames, but if I can move a little bit of honey a little bit closer, I will do that every time. Put this here, give them a little space, give them pollen so they have it. Ooh. We'll lock this baby back up. And then, of course, before you leave your apiary, when it's cold like this, you want to make sure all your lids are seated properly, all your boxes, there's no big air gaps. Everyone's fitting. As I look through the nukes that I just went through, a lot of them aren't seated properly. So you want to make sure before you leave for the day that you get everyone up to date and make sure everyone's looking good. I have this here. We'll check through. This was an A hive in the fall. And it looked like it was doing well last time I was here. So we'll check it again. Oh, obviously there's bees coming in the front that I didn't see. Woo, yeah. Lots of activity here. Very happy looking hive. This is good looking hive so far. See if I can pull out one of these frames without breaking nothing. I see the queen over here. Oh, and there is larva already. So I'm going to put this back together. Don't want to disturb them any more than I already have. Larva means that this queen's been laying eggs for a couple of days already. So I'm in a good spot. What I'm going to do is give them a nice chunk of pollen here. Nice big chunk of pollen here. And close it back up. No disturbance. No additional disturbance, I should say. They're already probably really pissed off. All right. So this one is a 3 out of 5 laying. And then the date, this one is a 1 out of 5 laying. Cool. All right, folks. Do we have any more questions as I move along? I think this might be the end of my discussion here today. Let me see if I can go back to settings and flip my camera around. All right. We are back. I am very happy to have everyone who was interacting on this live stream. I do this live stream because I want to teach people a little bit about bees and just have a discussion, because a lot of people don't know and they're a little clueless, and sometimes they're a little too clueless. They don't even know how to ask for help. So having these opportunities for you to learn and see what I'm doing and the opportunity to ask some questions, I think that it's a good thing for some folks out there. So if you enjoyed this live stream, please be sure to share it with your friends and things like that. Thank you, Kim. And thanks to Joe for watching and tuning in. Um, anyway, I think next week I will show you how to build one of these nuke boxes, since I was talking so much about it today. And as always, thank you for watching the show, and happy beekeeping.